happened on a Tuesday, 9:42 a.m. Cold coffee in her hand, badge clipped to her sweater. Emily Carter stood in the HR office, blinds half drawn, tension thick as wet cement. "We're letting you go," said Claudia from HR, avoiding eye contact. "Why?" Emily asked, her voice calm but sharp. Claudia gestured vaguely to a folder. "You've created a hostile environment. You've been disruptive." Disruptive. That was rich. All Emily had done was report that the company's finance department was inflating numbers on sustainability reports to secure government grants. Fraud. Pure and simple. She'd followed protocol. Documented everything. And now, she was standing there, a whistleblower with a pink slip. Behind Claudia, the head of legal, Brad something, sat like a gargoyle in a cheap suit, tapping his pen on the table. "You can pack up your desk," Claudia added. "We'll have someone escort you out." Emily smiled then, not because she was defeated, but because she knew something they didn't. She'd already made the call. 10 minutes before walking into this meeting, she'd hit send on an email that would detonate the carefully constructed lies propping up the company's empire. An email that was now sitting in the inbox of a federal investigator. And the clock was ticking. As Emily walked out of the HR office, her box of things felt surprisingly light. Just a photo frame, a stress ball shaped like a planet, and the flash drive. The flash drive. 16 GB, password protected, labeled only EC. Truth, security. Was already waiting at her desk when she arrived. She ignored their forced politeness and moved slowly, deliberately, grabbing her few things while keeping one hand in her coat pocket. Her phone still buzzing silently. The email had been received and opened. Twice. The Department of Justice. Contact, Agent Rivera, hadn't responded yet. But Emily knew better than to expect fireworks. Whistleblower protocol was a slow grind. Unless you added kindling. And she had. Emily had scheduled a secondary drop, a printed manila folder labeled "For Press." Embargo lifts if whistleblower is terminated. It was already with her friend Dana, a journalist at an independent outlet. Dana had strict instructions. If I'm fired or silenced in any way, publish, no questions. Emily handed the flash drive to the security guard on her way out. He blinked. "Ma'am, I can't." "It's not for you," she said. "It's for the U.S. Marshals." The guard looked confused. Emily didn't stop walking. Down the elevator, across the lobby, out into the freezing air of downtown. She looked at her watch. Minutes since the email. Minutes to impact. She smiled. Inside the sleek glass tower of Dynexia Corp, panic had not yet set in. But it was warming up in the wings. Up on the 37th floor, CEO Vincent Hallberg was finishing his third espresso and reviewing his talking points for a scheduled ESG webinar when his assistant burst in without knocking, a major violation of the unspoken rules. "Sir," she said, "you need to take this." He raised an eyebrow. "I told you no interruptions before." "It's the Department of Justice." Line 2. His espresso cup froze halfway to his mouth. A beat. Then 2. Vincent set it down. Slowly, he pressed the line. "This is Hallberg." The voice on the other end was clear, measured, and entirely unbothered. "Mr. Hallberg, this is Special Agent Rivera. You've just been named in a federal whistleblower report detailing fraudulent activity tied to government funding and falsified environmental disclosures." Vincent sat straighter. "That's absurd." "It won't seem absurd in about 4 minutes. We're en route to your office." Click. That was it. No argument. No back and forth. Just a deadline with handcuffs at the end. Vincent stood. For the first time in his entire career, he didn't know what to say. And as the internal legal team started scrambling below, alerts ringing, inboxes pinging, Emily Carter was already across town, sipping a latte in a corner cafe with Dana from the press. The headline draft was open on Dana's screen. Dynexia CEO named in federal fraud probe following whistleblower termination. Emily stirred her coffee, watching the steam curl upward. Minutes had passed, and the fire had just started. At 10:02 a.m., The first black SUV pulled up to Dynexia Corp's revolving glass doors. 2 more followed. Inside, the receptionist stared. As 5 federal agents in suits walked in, not running, not shouting, just moving with the quiet confidence of people who knew they didn't need permission. Agent Rivera led them, ID already in hand. "We're here for Vincent Hallberg," she said, "and we're executing a federal search warrant." By the time security reached the front desk, Rivera's team was already on the elevator. Upstairs, chaos bloomed like a bad rumor. Execs whispering in hallways, assistants deleting files, a mid-level manager nearly crying in the break room. Vincent was pacing in his corner office. He had called legal, then PR, then his private fixer, who was conveniently in a meeting. Translation, already flipping. He stared at the building across the skyline, sweating under his tailored suit. He never saw Agent Rivera step through the door until she was halfway into the room. "Mr. Hallberg," she said calmly, "you're under arrest for federal grant fraud, falsification of environmental records, and obstruction of justice." He opened his mouth to object, but the words never came. Too late. The click of the handcuffs echoed louder than any denial. Down in the lobby, employees had stopped pretending not to look. Phones were out. Someone whispered, "Is that the CEO?" Someone else answered, "Was." The elevator dinged. Rivera and her team escorted Vincent through the glass doors, past the same security guard who'd walked Emily out exactly 14 minutes earlier. The guard blinked. Same coat, different ending. And across town, Emily got the text from Dana. "They got him. Front page goes live in 5. She took a sip of her coffee and whispered to herself, "Checkmate." By 10:30 a.m., Dynexia Corp was trending, not because of a press release, because of a video. Shot by an intern from behind the fern wall in the 3rd-floor break room, it showed CEO Vincent Hallberg being led out in cuffs, flanked by federal agents. A timestamp, a shaky zoom, gasps in the background. The video was uploaded to TikTok with the caption, "When you fire the wrong employee and she brings the feds 10 mins later." Justice served, Noir Dynexia down. It hit 1 million views in under an hour. Meanwhile, Emily's story, the real one, went live through Dana's outlet. A carefully sourced exposé backed by official documents, screenshots, and an interview, under the condition of anonymity, with Emily herself. Other journalists picked it up, then podcasts, then national networks. By lunchtime, Emily was being called the Erin Brockovich of ESG fraud on a primetime news ticker. And while she was flooded with offers, book deals, speaking gigs, even a documentary pitch from Netflix, Emily stayed quiet, focused. This wasn't about fame. It was about the truth, about every worker who got told to stay quiet and play nice, about every spreadsheet cooked to impress investors, every penalty dodged in boardroom whispers, and somewhere in a dim office, a Dynexia board member muttered, "We should have listened to her." But now, it was far, far too late. Emily wasn't the only one who had seen the cracks. She was just the first to speak. By Wednesday morning, her email inbox, the one she thought she'd have to abandon, was full of encrypted messages, all signed with fake names and burner accounts. "I worked in logistics. You were right. They manipulated the transport emissions data. Marketing forced us to create fake sustainability metrics for the quarterly report. I have the internal emails. I've been too scared to come forward, until now." One message simply read, "You're not alone anymore." Emily sat in her tiny apartment, laptop open, rain tapping at the window. Her screen was filled with stories. Real people, real evidence. People who had watched her take the risk and win, and now they were ready to join her. She encrypted the data and forwarded it all to Agent Rivera. She'd established a private line after the arrest, and Rivera had made one thing very clear. If others are coming forward, we'll protect them. Emily knew what that meant. Whistleblower immunity, legal shields, the kind of protections they wished they had before. It was a wildfire now, and Dynexia's entire executive branch was standing in a house of kindling. Meanwhile, on a private island somewhere, Vincent Halberg's backup plan was failing. Frozen accounts, board resignations. Subpoenaed yacht. He wasn't getting out of this. And Emily, she wasn't finished yet. By the end of the week, Dynexia's stock price had dropped 47%. Their board of directors held an emergency session via Zoom, half of them in corporate panic mode, the other half quietly lawyering up. We can spin this. It's one employee's word against... Actually, no, it's 24 employees now. Okay, we can't spin this. Internal documents leaked like a burst dam. A former VP anonymously provided proof that the CEO had personally signed off on falsified metrics submitted to the federal government. Fake reports. Forged audits. All of it. Meanwhile, the DOJ raided a second office in Nevada. And Emily? She was working with Agent Rivera directly now, not just as a witness, but a consultant. This isn't just fraud, Emily said in their latest call. It's systemic. They didn't lie to cover up mistakes. They built the entire company on lies. Rivera didn't respond right away. Then, how fast can you come in? By Monday, Emily was sitting in a conference room inside the DOJ. Across from her, 2 federal prosecutors, 2 agents, and a laptop full of sealed files. Dynexia isn't the only one, Rivera said. Your testimony could expose 3 more. Companies tied into the same funding loop. Emily blinked. This was bigger than she'd imagined. You're not just helping us bring them down, Rivera added. You might help rewrite how this entire system is monitored. Emily sat back. It hit her then. She hadn't just exposed a fraud. She'd started a movement. It was supposed to be over. The CEO was in jail, the fraud exposed, the media storm still churning. But late one night, while going through her cloud backups, Emily found something she didn't remember saving. A file labeled Novak's linked core.docs. At first, she thought it was a mistake, some old draft from college. But when she opened it, she froze. The document wasn't about Dynexia. It was about Novak's Holdings, a private equity firm that had secretly funded Dynexia's launch a decade ago. According to the file, Novak's hadn't just invested in Dynexia. They had orchestrated the entire scheme from the beginning, funding shell companies to siphon grants, paying consulting firms to whitewash environmental audits, using Dynexia as a front to launder credibility before flipping smaller green tech startups for inflated profits. There were names, bank transfers, offshore accounts. This wasn't just corporate fraud. This was organized financial crime masquerading as innovation. Emily's pulse quickened. How had this file ended up in her backup? She checked the metadata. Last edited 3 months ago. By jandrewsdynexia.com. Jacob Andrews, her old supervisor, the one who resigned suddenly right after she raised her first internal complaint. He'd known, maybe even tried to blow the whistle. Himself. But he'd vanished from public view since leaving the company. Emily opened a new encrypted message to Agent Rivera. Rivera, we've got a bigger fish. Jacob Andrews had vanished without a trace. No LinkedIn updates. No new employment records. No digital footprint since his resignation. Emily had assumed, like everyone else, that he'd taken a payout to stay quiet. But now, with his name tied to the ghost file that blew the lid off Novak's Holdings, she wasn't so sure. Agent Rivera acted fast. Within 12 hours of receiving Emily's message, the DOJ had launched a quiet internal inquiry into Novak's. No subpoenas yet, just shadows and whispers. Meanwhile, Emily dug through her old Dynexia correspondence, and there it was. An archived internal message from Jacob, time-stamped weeks before his resignation. Emily, if you keep going down this road, you'll find things no one was ever meant to see. If that happens, look in the backups. I left something behind. She had missed it. Everyone had. And Jacob? Rivera tracked a last known address to a remote cabin in upstate Vermont. Off-grid, listed under an LLC owned by a fake consulting firm. When the agents arrived, the place was empty. No signs of a struggle, no recent activity. But on the dusty kitchen table, they found a burner phone. On it, one video. Emily watched it with Rivera in a sealed DOJ room. Jacob appeared on screen, his face drawn but steady. If you're watching this, they found me. Or I disappeared before they could. Novak's runs deeper than anyone knows. Dynexia was just the beginning. Check the Swiss account labeled Aegis Delta. That's where the real paper trail starts. Emily felt the chill in her spine. Jacob hadn't run. He'd been hiding. And now, maybe worse. One thing was certain. Novak's wasn't just a ghost fund. It was a puppet master, and Emily was pulling at strings they had killed to keep buried. The account name was burned into Emily's brain, Aegis Delta, with Rivera's help. The DOJ pushed a request through Swiss authorities, leveraging new international whistleblower protections. Within days, they got a response, and what they found was staggering. Aegis Delta wasn't just a numbered account. It was a financial hub, a clearinghouse for over a dozen shadow companies tied to environmental tech startups, each funded, pumped up with fake ESG credentials, and then sold at inflated valuations. And every trail, every wire transfer, consulting fee, and research grant pointed back to a quiet corner office in Novak's Holdings' New York headquarters. The person signing the approvals, Alyssa Wren, Dynexia's former director of strategy, now CFO of Novak's. The pieces snapped together. She hadn't left Dynexia to escape the scandal. She had graduated to running the whole operation. Rivera stared at the screen. This isn't just corporate fraud anymore. This is racketeering. Emily nodded slowly, and then she said the one thing no one at the table wanted to hear. They're going to come for me now. They didn't say it out loud, but everyone knew she was right. Up until now, Emily had been a disruption, a headline, a storm the boardroom could ride out. But with Aegis Delta exposed, she had become a threat to the system. That night, Rivera moved her into a federal protection program. New phone, new address, new name, if she wanted it. Emily declined. "I'm not hiding," she said. "Not this time." Instead, she pulled out a folder from her coat, labeled in her own handwriting, Novak's, How They Lied to the World Public, release prepped and timed, not to the press, but to the public. The plan was simple. Burn the veil down before they could silence her. Monday, 9 a.m. sharp. The folder Emily labeled Novak's, How They Lied to the World hit every major whistleblower network on the internet. Not behind paywalls, not filtered by press teams. Raw, real, explosive. Over 600 pages of emails, wire transfer records, fake ESG certificates, forged environmental audits, and contracts with offshore shell firms, all traced back to Novak's Holdings. The first line of her release read, "If you've ever believed your company's green mission was real, check the signatures. They all lead here." By 9:12 a.m., the link had 5 million views. By 9:35, international regulators were issuing statements. By 10 GAS, Novak's servers went down, not from hacking, but from volume overload. Too many people trying to read what they'd buried. The public didn't just read it, they organized. Climate activists called for mass protests. Tech startups cut ties with Novak's funded firms. Former Dynexia partners issued emergency statements. A coalition of ex-employees launched a class action lawsuit, and 3 Novak's board members resigned by lunch. At Dynexia's old office, someone graffitied across the empty glass wall, "She warned you." You laughed. Meanwhile, Rivera called Emily. "You just did in one morning what takes us 6 months with subpoenas," she said. "You're going to need more protection." Emily smiled faintly. "No, they're the ones who need protection now." But beneath her calm, she knew the real storm was coming, because Novak's wasn't going to die quietly. They'd built this web for years, and they weren't going to let one woman tear it down without a fight. 2 days after the public release, Emily received a message that didn't come through official DOJ channels. No subject line, no sender name, just one sentence. "Let's talk before this gets messy." Attached, a time, a location, and a digital signature. Encrypted, verified, Novak's, Rivera insisted they ignore it. "It's bait," she said. "They're trying to spook you or worse." But Emily wasn't scared. She was curious. She agreed to go, but under DOJ surveillance, wired and watched from a van across the street. The meeting place? A luxury hotel suite downtown, far from Novak's glass towers. Neutral ground. Emily walked in just after 8 p.m., waiting for her. Alyssa Wren, CFO of Novak's, former Dynexia exec, designer of the Aegis Delta network. She didn't get up. She simply gestured to the chair across from her and said, "You win, almost." Emily sat. "Almost?" Alyssa slid a folder across the table. Inside, a non-disclosure agreement, a consulting contract for 7 figures, and a promise they'd dismantle Novak's quietly, under the radar, with her as the face of their new reform. In exchange, she'd walk away with money, protection, and a guarantee. No lawsuits, no threats, no war. Alyssa leaned back and smiled. "You can change the system from the inside, Emily, and this way you don't have to burn it all down." Emily stared at the folder. Then, without a word, she pulled out her phone and hit send. Across the street in the surveillance van, Rivera got the signal. The feed went live. DOJ agents moved in. Emily stood. "You had your chance to fix things years ago," she said. "Now we're not fixing, we're ending." Alyssa's smile didn't break, but her hands twitched. Outside, the DOJ was already in the hallway. The DOJ stormed the suite in under 60 seconds. Alyssa Wren was caught mid-smirk, her voice still calm as they read her rights. But the calm cracked when she saw who else had been listening. Across monitors in the DOJ van, live feeds showed simultaneous raids in Zurich, Dubai, Singapore, and New York. Novak's global shell companies were going up in smoke, real time. Arrests, confiscated servers, and shuttered accounts. The entire Aegis Delta network was unraveling. And Emily? She watched it happen with Jacob Andrews at her side, alive, exhausted, but back. He'd been recovered from a safe house outside Montreal. Just hours before the meeting, under quiet DOJ protection, he had been the key, the original architect of the financial funnel, before he'd realized what Novak's was really building. "I never thought we'd get this far," Jacob said, eyes fixed on the screen. Emily didn't blink. "I did." By morning, Novak's Holdings' website was replaced by a federal seizure notice. Their stock, already hemorrhaging, was frozen. A sweeping indictment was issued for racketeering, fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy across 5 countries. Emily's name was in every headline, but not as a victim. She was the first whistleblower to take down a multinational fraud ring and stay standing. At a press conference that afternoon, Rivera spoke plainly. "This isn't just justice for one company. This is a blueprint for how we fight back." And Emily? She didn't speak. She didn't need to. She had already said everything that mattered, not with words, but with truth. With Novak's gutted and its executives behind bars, Emily tried, for the first time in months, to breathe. She went back home, not the safe house. Home. Her apartment still smelled like old takeout and burnt coffee, like nothing had changed. But everything had. The lawsuits were mounting. Reforms were in motion. News outlets called her the firewall, the one who stopped the spread of corporate rot. Still, something gnawed at her, a gap. She revisited every file, every message, every recorded meeting, not for the case, but for closure. That's when she found it, an unmarked flash drive taped behind a filing cabinet. Something left behind during her last days at Dynexia. She didn't remember hiding it. Maybe Jacob had. She plugged it in, one video, time-stamped a year before her whistleblower complaint. It wasn't a financial document. It wasn't even related to Novak's. It was a boardroom recording. The camera, likely hidden, pointed toward a long mahogany table. Around it, Dynexia's executive team. At the head sat someone Emily didn't recognize, at least not right away. He didn't work at Dynexia. He didn't even belong in energy. He was a government official. Department of Infrastructure. High level. Smiling. We fund startups like Dynexia, he said, because they help move public money without congressional oversight. You provide the illusion. We move the real pieces behind the curtain. Emily froze. She replayed the sentence, again and again. We move the real pieces behind the curtain. This wasn't just Novaks. This was bigger than corporations. This was government-sanctioned laundering, and if that tape got out, the people who fell so far would look like small dominoes in a much longer chain. Emily sat in silence, flash drive in hand. She had a choice now: burn the last bridge, or start the next war. Emily stared at the screen long after the video ended. She knew what it meant: the raids, the indictments, the headlines. All of it, just trimming the rot, not uprooting the system. Because at the top of this chain wasn't a CEO, it was a government official. She ran the video through facial recognition software the DOJ had once given her access to during the investigation. Within seconds, it returned a hit. Marcus Hale, Deputy Director, U.S. Department of Infrastructure and Environmental Oversight, publicly known for championing clean energy initiatives. Privately, the hand behind the curtain. Emily sent the clip to Agent Rivera. No message, just the file. The reply came quickly. This goes above my clearance, walk carefully. So she did. For 2 weeks, Emily vanished from the public eye. Not hiding, strategizing. She set up blind drops, off-grid backups, and press contingencies across 5 countries. Then she contacted a trusted journalist at a major global outlet. She didn't want another takedown. She wanted detonation. On a quiet Monday morning, the full video was released, unedited, undeniable. The journalist's exposé followed 30 minutes later. Whistleblower alleges federal official orchestrated green tech laundering network. The fallout was immediate. Hale was placed on leave within the hour. Congress demanded a special investigation. And citizens, already raw from the Novak scandal, erupted. But the real twist? Emily didn't stop there. She'd spent those 2 weeks quietly organizing a coalition. Former whistleblowers, investigators, even tech workers once silenced by NDAs. Together they launched the Glass Project, a global platform to expose corporate government collusion with open-source transparency. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about redesigning the system to no longer need heroes like her. In a live-streamed Q&A, when asked if she feared what would come next, Emily smiled and said, "They thought burning me would keep their secrets safe, but I wasn't the fire. I was the spark." Fade to black.